So Benjamin Mack-Jackson, but we're going to go by Ben. So funny story. I know we've talked a little bit off the camera, and my parents actually met long. I'm 50, so a long time ago. But they met at, I think back then, it was the Leesburg commercial when they met. My mom was in advertising. My dad was a reporter editor. But your mom was a photojournalist, a photographer.
Yes, at the Daily Commercial.
It was at the Daily. And I can't remember what year it changed to Daily versus Leesburg.
That's a good question. I wouldn't know
It is
that
a good
myself
question.
either. Yeah.
I have to ask my dad. But that's so funny, right? It's a small world.
Very, very small. And I come across that a lot with, obviously in my family life, but also in the work that I do. It is a very small world.
So how long was she there?
I'm not sure exactly. I'll have to ask her. I feel bad that I don't know the exact year. But both my parents were photojournalists at one point in their careers, and I really do think that was probably a big source of inspiration for me.
Oh, yeah.
Growing up, I had a camera in my hand from a very young age. So
I love that. Is there any stories? What was their favorite thing they ever talked about, or places they went when they did that?
I know that my dad is extremely interested in fire, police, and EMS photography. That's his specialty. My mom actually was a photography instructor at Disney Institute. It no longer exists, but it was a photography program at Disney Institute. They kind of gave tours to different people at Disney, and they photographed wildlife and things like that. And I know that was a big highlight for her. She really enjoyed doing that. So yeah, photography is a big part of my family's DNA, I would say.
Right.
Of course, mine too. So yeah.
Do you have a brother too, a younger brother?
I do, yes. He's a junior at Rollins College, my alma mater as well. And he's interested in computer science and programming and coding and all that sort of stuff.
No photography?
Not really, no. And we always joke that he's building the future and I'm preserving the past. So
But that's perfect,
go
right?
hand in hand, exactly.
Yeah, I love that. That's great. You have any pets?
I have a dog, yes.
You do? What
A
kind?
Shetland sheepdog named Oreo, black and white Shetland sheepdog.
Love
So
it.
fitting,
I have two
yes.
dogs myself. That's great.
We're a big dog family, yeah.
Yeah, me too. Me too. I'm so excited to have you on the show.
Well, I'm excited to be talking about all the stuff I'm doing and to be back here in Lake County.
Welcome to the Style Podcast, presented by Plaza Cadillac and Plaza Lincoln, where our drive to be the best starts with you.
Bring some holiday cheer to your garage during the Lincoln Wishlist event. Take advantage of special offers like 0 down and 0% APR for 48 months on our award-winning lineup of luxury SUVs. Or choose Lincoln incentives of $4,000 on Corsair and $6,000 on Nautilus, Motor Trend's 2025 SUV of the Year. We also have a wide selection of certified pre-owned with a 6-year, 100,000-mile warranty and financing as low as 4.49%. Plaza Lincoln, across from the Leesburg Airport. Our drive to be the best starts with you.
Welcome to the Style Podcast. Once again, I am flying solo, but I'm excited, and Lori will be back next time. We are presented by Plaza Lincoln and Plaza Cadillac, and we'd also like to thank disability consultants, and I'm really excited about our next guest, Benjamin Mack-Jackson, but we're going by Ben.
Yes, ma'am.
And your story, when I was reading about you, is amazing. You're proof positive that you started at 13.
Yes, no, I've been a student of history for as long as I can remember, and I started my work interviewing World War II veterans at 13. So I was watching a documentary one day on TV, and I thought to myself, well, there must be more to these stories. There must be more to this history, more to this war. I remember in middle and high school, the history textbooks had very few pages about World War II in them, so that was kind of the start of it. But anyway, I was watching this documentary, and I thought to myself, yeah, I need to go out and ask the questions that I have about the war. And that's when I did my first interview. I went down to the Claremont Historical Society, just right over here in Lake County.
At 13.
At 13.
At 13.
Yes, and I went down and interviewed Charlie Consler, who was a P-51 fighter pilot during World War II. And he was 92 at the time, and I was 13. And it was basically just my iPhone on a stack of books. And
I know, that's what I read. And I was reading that, and I was like, this kid really, it's so impressive. Because a lot of 13-year-olds, they're playing video games. They might be outside or doing something. Nowadays, they're on social media. But for you to have that kind of tenacity at 13,
It was something that I'd grown up with. My parents had always been strong believers in education and getting me interested in various topics of education. But history was the one that really stuck with me, right? And so I found a way to take that education, both from in school and out of school, and make something different out of it.
So tell me, you have a nonprofit.
I do, yes. I started the World War II Veterans History Project, obviously officially in 2015 with its first interview, but it became a nonprofit in 2018, I believe. I couldn't be the president at the time. Obviously, I wasn't even 18 years old at the time, so my father was. But I'm now the founder and executive director of the World War II Veterans History Project based in Claremont. And our mission really is to give the past a future one story at a time by preserving the memories of our nation's World War II veterans.
I love that. So do you go into schools?
I do, yes. So
Okay.
the nonprofit has a three-tiered approach to preserving and documenting history. So our first approach is obviously these interviews with World War II veterans. So in the form of documentary films, we release those stories. We also do traveling museum exhibitions, which we can talk a little bit about later. I brought some artifacts to show today.
Great artifacts.
And the third tier, of course, is education, which encompasses obviously the films that we make, the museum exhibitions, but also programs for schools, different learning centers, and things like that.
That's amazing. It really is. And the first gentleman you spoke with, that very first interview, Charlie, what was his response when you, as a 13-year-old, I'm interested in that. What was his response? Was he touched? Was he just, I'm sure because for a lot of men and women that have been a part of a war, it's got to be hard to talk about. But at the same time, especially that generation, they want their stories to be known, I'm sure, too.
No question. And I learned from a very early age and early on doing this work that the World War II veterans were, they're obviously in the last years of their lives. And if they don't tell their story now, they're never going to have the chance to tell their story to anyone, right? So that's a very common theme, I think. And I'm not sure if it was the theme with Mr. Consler, but in many of the interviews I've done, that's, this is the first time oftentimes that they're sharing their stories with people outside of their family. Even when I'm in the room with their family, oftentimes the family says, I've never heard that story before, I've never talked about the war before. So it brings out stories that are important, not just to me or to the family, but to the public record and to the historical record in general.
Okay. So, let me ask this too. Do you speak to classes when you take this into the classroom? Do you do it yourself?
Mostly, yes. No, I try to go into as many schools as I can, and not only share the stories of these World War II veterans, but try to educate and inspire future generations about some of the lessons that the greatest generation can teach us, not just about the war, but about life and love and death. This is a generation that has very different values, particularly than any of our generations that came since. They came home from World War II and built the country that we know today, right? So there's a lot to learn from them, not just about the wartime experience. Of course, that's what I focus on, but when I'm talking to students especially, it's very important, I think, to raise all the other points. These were people just like them. They were 18, 19, 20 years old fighting a war, the same age of many of the high school and college students that I speak to. So,
let me ask you this. When you did this at 13, was it with the idea that, did you know you wanted to be a journalist? Did you know you wanted to do this? Or you just wanted to learn more about this?
No, it was a very selfish project at first. I was just interested in learning more for myself and understanding.
It just morphed into this.
Exactly. And it started with Mr. Consler. He gave me the contacts for 2 or 3 of his friends who were World War II veterans in the community. They gave me contacts to the VFW and the American Legion and then more and more veterans, and it just spiraled on. And over the past 10 years, I've interviewed nearly 400 World War II veterans, both here in the U.S. and abroad. Many of them here in the state of Florida, of course, because that's where I'm based. And
many, a lot of them probably retired here at some point.
Yes,
too,
yes. At one point, it was the highest population of World War II veterans were living in Florida. Yeah.
It's crazy. I'm just amazed by all of it. And I think I love it. I think it's amazing. I think like I said when we were talking before we started, it's so important to hear stories and record them, the recording of it, whether it's writing it down, whether it's videoing it, because that's how it translates generation after generation after generation.
It lives on.
It lives on. And that's the cool thing about it. So tell me something maybe that, I don't know, that like I've studied history. I love history. We were talking to my husband's a huge World War II buff, but maybe something that the common person wouldn't know. Something that from some of your interviews, is there anything that sticks out that says, hey, you know, this wasn't real common, but you know, this was going on or something like that?
Well, there's one story in particular that I love to share whenever I'm doing podcasts or media appearances, and that's of Roy Morrison, who actually, Roy here,
Roy.
he was one of the early veterans that I interviewed when doing this work. He lived over in Claremont, and he served in the 9th Infantry Division during World War II. So he fought in the Battle of Normandy in France, and you can see here he's holding a Purple Heart in his hand, which is a medal that was awarded to soldiers for wounds received in combat or posthumously for if you were killed in combat. And now Roy, this is Roy's Purple Heart, his actual Purple Heart medal
Really?
here. But his story is a little bit deeper than just the Purple Heart and the wound. So what happened was on Roy's 20th birthday in July of 1944, he was shot through the leg by German machine guns, and he was obviously severely wounded. He was evacuated. The doctors did surgery on him, and they found and removed one bullet from his leg. He was patched up. He went back into service. He ended up cooking on troop trains later on in the Battle of the Bulge and beyond. And that was that. He came back home. He was discharged, and he became a firefighter and retired. 60 years after the end of the war, he was having some sciatic pain, and he went to the hospital, and the nurse asks him, you know, when did you get shot? And he said, oh, well, 80 years or 60 years ago during World War II. And she says, no, when did you get shot? 60 years ago
Right.
during World War II. Well, you still have a bullet in you, is what she tells him.
Oh my gosh.
And so for 60 years, he had carried a bullet. When the German bullets entered his leg, there were 2 of them. The doctors only found and removed 1. And so for 60 years, he carried this bullet, and it slowly crawled up his leg, up to his sciatic, and it was finally giving him pain. But it had never hit bone, so it never mushroomed out. It didn't hit
Right.
the bone, so he never knew it was in there. And so, of course, the doctors, they removed it. And he told me during the interview, he said, if I could carry the weight all those years, I was going to carry the weight the rest of my life. And so he had it mounted on a chain, and for the rest of his life, he wore it on the chain around his neck.
Incredible.
Yeah. So
That's an incredible story.
yeah, and so Roy's son, Frank, donated the bullet and Roy's Purple Heart and his dog tag, which you see here, to us to include with our traveling museum exhibitions. So it's a really incredible story. And
Honestly, that is incredible. That is incredible.
Yeah. So
And the dog tags. Can I hold?
yeah,
the
of
dog
course.
tags? Those are
Yes.
amazing
Yeah,
stuff.
he was a Floridian. You can see he's got a Miami address on the dog tag, and yeah, he was an incredible man. And actually, his uniform that he donated to us was the first artifact ever donated to our nonprofit. So he has a very special place, of course, in my heart, but
yeah.
of course for our organization as a whole. His story is
Well, that's a
really
super
powerful.
cool story. I mean,
Yeah.
that's crazy that a bullet,
Yeah.
and actually that it took 60 years for it to even cause him pain.
Exactly right, and he was a firefighter. He was very active after the war.
exactly.
And 60 years later, I think he was in Bob Evans or something when he decided that it was time for him to go to the.
And I'm curious,
doctor.
this is just me being curious. Like, if you're going through TSA or something, it doesn't pick it up?
I think back then they didn't even have
didn't have
that stuff. I don't know.
I mean, I got stopped last time I went through a month ago. There was absolutely nothing on me, and I was like, "What is going on?"
Yeah, a bullet in his leg probably would have definitely been stopped.
That
and
is
seen,
crazy.
But yeah, no, he was a remarkable man. He passed away in 2019.
But see, that's the super cool thing is he's it's not just a memory, but like his story lives on.
Exactly, his legacy.
I can't wait to tell that story. I mean, that's amazing.
It's an important piece in our collection, of course, but his story, his personal memories of that day and, of course, of the entire war as a whole are also very important for our archive and for our collection.
Okay. Well, you know what? I want to get back to, I want to talk about the traveling exhibition too, but we're going to do that after a break.
Yeah.
And we'll be back in a few.
Luxury awaits during our season's best sales event. Now is the best time to take home a new Cadillac with 2.9% APR and $2,000 savings on our best-selling lineup of electric vehicles. Or take home one of our legendary gas SUVs or sedans, also with these attractive seasonal offers. Plaza owners enjoy benefits like 4 years of free maintenance, free car washes, and more. Come experience the Plaza difference today. Plaza Cadillac across from the Leesburg Airport. Our drive to be the best starts with you.
Welcome back. I'm with Ben Mack-Jackson. I'm going to call you a prodigy because that's what I think you are. I'm amazed the stories we just talked about, and I want to get right back to your traveling exhibition of artifacts. So, what does that look like? I mean, when you say traveling? What does that mean exactly?
So, from very early on in this project, we started getting donations of artifacts from World War II veterans or their families. It was initially just to me. They wanted to entrust me with these pieces of history, right?
That's awesome.
And I realized this, I have to do something with this artifact, this uniform, this medal, this helmet. And that's when I came up with the idea of doing traveling museum exhibitions alongside my educational presentations that I give, right? So not only presenting the stories of veterans on film or in a presentation, but showing artifacts that they actually used or wore or medals that they won during the war. Students learn in a very interactive way through these exhibitions, and that's something that I've really had great success with. I think that it's important for people to learn in ways that are engaging for them, and artifacts really do that.
Oh, yeah, visuals are huge, but to be able to touch it,
exactly.
or
tangible
like
connections to the past are critical.
Yes.
I think, and especially in this day and age where everything is, it's the attention spans are very short.
Right.
It's important to present content that's keeps people's interest, and I think artifacts very much do that if they're presented in the right way. So we've had great success with our traveling museum exhibitions. We maintain a collection of close to 25,000 artifacts from World War II, everything from helmets to medals to a Higgins boat LCVP, which is one of the landing craft that would have been used in the Battle of Normandy and other amphibious operations. So we acquired that in 2020, and it's currently undergoing restoration. So we've got a pretty large collection that we're hoping to open a brick and mortar museum in the future, but our traveling exhibits allow people all over the country to come in contact with these pieces of history for the time being.
I love that. So how does the funding work for your nonprofit?
So as a nonprofit, we collect donations from different organizations, community members. It's a very grassroots effort, right? We're actually launching a new fundraiser this month called Voices to Remember to try to preserve more World War II veteran stories before it's too late. Especially as we're, traveling all across the country all the time to interview veterans. It gets expensive very quick. But the chance to interview and meet these guys is now. And, if we stopped and fundraised for 2 years and made all the money we needed to make, most of the veterans that are on my current list would no longer be alive, right?
Right.
So,
No, it's just like the time is, it's like
it's now.
Yeah,
it
is.
Yes.
I mean, you don't have a lot of time to do it.
Not at all. And that's why we're very grateful and we rely on donations from people in the community and different companies and organizations to keep this work going. It's 100% grassroots. And it's important to get these stories before it's too late,
Yeah. I would think, is there grants you can get? Like,
we've certainly had applied for and received certain grants in the past.
I would
we're
think
always looking for more in the future.
Like the Department of Education in the state of Florida would be happy to. I mean, because in all honesty, now with the way they do testing and everything like that, sometimes I taught for a while, and I always kind of felt like, because reading and math were of course tested, that, and then science came in. I always liked teaching social studies or history, and I always felt like it kind of got the shaft in some ways. I would try to find ways to incorporate it when we would do reading. So, reading about Florida history and things like that. So, I mean, I would think that would be a great way to do it. And kids do learn so much better if they can do hands-on.
Certainly, yeah. I mean, there's a lot of hands-on teaching for math and for science, right? That's a big portion of that, especially younger ages. But for history, it's the same text and photographs that have been in books for 50 years. And
exactly.
If you want to actually teach the stories properly, you have to do it in a way that's interesting and engaging for the next generation.
You do.
Period.
I remember when I did teach fourth grade at the Villages Elementary, not the charter, the other one off of Rolling Acres. We did a really cool thing. In fourth grade, we would get veterans to come in. And they would, it was right around Veterans Day, and like a group of 5 kids would sit with one veteran, and they would all sit together in every fourth grade class, and they would get to write about the veteran experience. And then whoever won for their group, we went to this big thing at the Veterans. There was a Veterans Park in Spanish Springs, and they did the 13-point fold of the flag. Like, it was this big ceremony. And the kids loved it, and they learned from those people.
Engaging experience.
It was so engaging, yeah. So let me ask you this. So you morphed into, you've got this great nonprofit. So when did you really start morphing into the journalistic side of this, though?
So obviously from the beginning, I've been doing video interviews, right? So everything's recorded on film and audio, and I try to make it as professional as possible to, using documentary films. So a lot of the stuff I've been doing from a very young age is technically journalism, but I became very interested in journalism as a career, especially starting in around 2021, 2022, and especially in 2022 when the Russian invasion, the full-scale Russian invasion of Ukraine began. I had gathered these skills as a documentarian by interviewing World War II veterans for all these years and felt that I wanted to use my skills over there as well to document what was going on in Ukraine. So during my spring break from college in March of 2022, I went there for the first time and documented the scenes of refugees coming across the border from Ukraine into Poland. And that was the first reporting trip essentially that I made over there. I just went with my camera and figured that I could do something to document the suffering of these people and the situation that they were in. And then in May of 2022, I did a trip during my summer break from college that year. That was my trip that I made to Sumy Oblast in eastern Ukraine and also in the Kyiv region of Ukraine, where I documented the aftermath of the battles and the current situation faced by Ukrainian troops at the front. So
okay, I just have to tell you, I'm seriously amazed. You gave up spring break and summer break to do that. I just find that fascinating. It's just, it's amazing. And really, I hope your parents are super proud of you because that's amazing. And it's one of those things where you see people suffering and you're trying to tell their story, right? How did you do it? Did you record it, then bring it back over here? Did you live stream? I mean, what did you do with the information once you did all of that?
Well, I'm primarily, in terms of my journalism work, a photojournalist or a visual journalist,
gotcha.
right? Visual storyteller is what I call it. And I think that it's the best way for people.
Oh, definitely. People want to see,
stories.
yes.
Exactly, right. So I do a lot of photojournalism while I'm over there during my trips to Ukraine, documenting the stories. But of course, I also love to write. So I do document the stories in written form as well. And, I, as an independent journalist with this work, I haven't had as many opportunities to publish it in large platforms. There's already a very large cohort of international correspondents and, foreign correspondents that do this sort of work. And, I'm just trying to find different stories and unique stories to present to my community and to my audiences that are interested on social media and on my own website. And I think it's, there are unique stories that I find. It's a war, and there's always going to be stories that go untold. And that's my goal, is to find these untold, unique stories and publish them for people to see.
Well, yeah, because a lot of time the mainstream media, the correspondents, a lot of times you see more shock and awe. Is like, or you see something that they're all covering about the same thing. What was the story that stuck out with you in Ukraine?
I think the important thing to note in terms of the mainstream media, if you want to call it that, is that they're limited in terms of their bandwidth as well, as we all are, right? And I think that it's important that they cover the stories that are best, they're best capable to cover, and then the independent journalists cover the stories that they're best capable to cover. And together, I think it presents a pretty good picture of what's happening over there. One story in particular that really sticks with me is during one of my trips over there in May of 2022, I was working with this unit in Sumy Oblast of eastern Ukraine called the Sumy Partisans, right? And so they were officially not part of the military, but they were fighting to defend their city and their country, of course, from Russian aggression. They had successfully defended the city of Sumy from Russian attacks in the early parts of 2022 by breaking into their police stations after all the police fled, taking the weapons and defending their city from the Russians successfully. Really incredible story there. And so I got to work with them for a couple weeks and watch what they did and, experience their movements and their training in this region of Ukraine. And there was one soldier in particular who I got to know quite well, and his name was Kolya. And he was actually the brother of the driver that I had hired on the trip. I was staying in their apartment. We were very close.
Right.
And so I got to know him quite well. And at the end of the trip, obviously I was wearing my body armor on the trip, as protection. And I noticed that he didn't have any body armor that he was wearing. So I gave him my plate carrier with my plates before I left, and I went home, right? That was that. It was a very successful reporting trip. Well, in February of 2023, I got a notice on my phone from, it was a colleague of mine, I believe, and so he said, Kolya was killed in action today. His vehicle hit a Russian landmine, and he was killed. And that was a very important moment for me, because I realized that, again, like with the World War II stories, these stories weren't just for me to document because I felt like documenting them. They were important for not only myself, but for the families of the people that I was documenting, but also for the historical record, right? And Kolya's family was extremely grateful for the photographs and the stories that I documented. But of course, I was extremely grateful that they even let me go and help tell their stories. And so I actually went back and visited his grave a couple months later in 2023 with his family, interviewed them. And so it's become this story, really, about him and his life and his sacrifice and his family. He left behind 2 young children and his wife. It's really a tragic story. But that's one that really, made me realize the importance of doing that work over there.
It's just amazing. I have to ask, language-wise, how was there a language barrier?
Of course, naturally. I don't speak Ukrainian or Russian, and so it's difficult, of course. I do usually work with people over there who translate for me. A typical reporting trip over there, you're going to work with a driver or and a field producer. Sometimes that's a role combined into one.
Right.
And usually they're English speaking, right? I did one trip in particular in December of 2023 to January 2024, and I had a fantastic fixer named Ilya, and he was my driver, my fixer, my translator, and my field producer all combined into
that's
one.
nice.
And
All wrapped up
he
in
was
one.
awesome.
Yeah.
So shout out to Ilya, of course, and he's actually now serving in the armed forces of Ukraine, defending Ukraine. He was now inducted into the military. But yeah, I had a fantastic trip with him over there. And the role of the fixer and the field producer in this work, for Western journalists in particular, is critical. It's paramount, because without them, like you said, communication would be very difficult.
Yeah.
And also safety and security. These fixers and field producers know the terrain better than anyone, because they've taken journalists there dozens of times. And without them, we could get into real trouble.
You are fascinating. We're going to take another break, and we'll be back in just a few.
Get all the Social Security disability benefits you deserve with disability consultant Jeff Bell. Our experienced Florida certified ADR handle claims on a contingency fee basis, meaning you don't pay unless we recover money for you. We have established a strong reputation as a firm that cares and provides the best care to its clients. Call us today or visit cbell.com.
Welcome back to the Style Podcast, presented by Plaza Lincoln and Plaza Cadillac. I'm here with Ben, and we were talking before the break about, the sad experience, but the really meaningful experience you had in Ukraine. And I don't want to not get to the stuff up here. So tell me about this.
Well, we were talking a little bit earlier about my traveling museum exhibitions, and this is one of the latest acquisitions into our museum collection. It's an incredible piece of history. So it's an original World War II M1 helmet. So it would have been worn in combat by American soldiers during World War II. And this particular helmet was worn by Colonel Lambert Friedrich, and he served in the 30th Infantry Regiment of the 3rd Infantry Division during World War II. And this is his original helmet that he wore in combat during World War II. So unlike a lot of the other artifacts that we have in the collection where they were awarded to the veterans like medals after the war, they never actually were in combat. This was actually in the war. It is heavy, and this is... It bears the insignia of his division on each side, which was the 3rd Infantry Division. On the front, there's a lieutenant's bar, which was his rank during World War II. He was a first lieutenant. And on the back, there's a tactical mark, which indicates what company he served in the 3rd Infantry Division.
The detail on it is amazing, too, like even in the inside of it.
Exactly, yeah. So that's the helmet liner, and if you hand it to me here, I can show you how it works. So the helmet itself is made of steel, obviously, but they have a liner inside for comfort. You can see it's got webbing in there, a leather band, and this one's obviously in rough condition, but it's been through a war, so what's to be expected. But soldiers did a lot more with their helmets than just wear them for protection, right? This could have been something that you cooked in, that you cleaned in, that you shaved in. And so there's something called a helmet liner, right? And it can be removed from the helmet, It's got the same markings as the helmet itself, but now you have a metal shell, right?
Right.
You can cook, you can clean, you can wash, you can shave, you can do whatever you want with this. So they were really a tool for the soldiers, not just to wear for protection in combat, for what minimal protection it provided. They were a vital part of their kit. So we're honored to have this. It was donated by his daughter, Kathy Godwin of Tampa, and it will be a highlight for sure in our museum collection moving forward. But it's a really rare and incredible piece of history. So
that is. It's amazing. It's amazing. Okay, so tell me about this, because not only are you a gifted photojournalist, writer, interviewer, purveyor of all things historical, and in regards to World War II and now Ukraine. You've written a book.
I did, yes. So this was published in 2021. It's called World War II History for Teens. And
So how old were you then?
I think I was 18 or so when it was published. And it was written over the span of a year or two, and the publisher reached out to me and asked me to write this book, essentially as a guide for kids and teens to get them more engaged and interested in the war, right? And of course, I had all these experiences of interviewing World War II veterans. None of their stories are directly featured in the book, but many of them were involved in the creation of it, right? So obviously the inspiration, they were the inspiration for
Right.
it. Of course, you can open it. There's a line in here that kind of really sums up why I wrote it. It's dedicated to the World War II veterans, our nation's greatest generation, and the future generations who have the responsibility to remember the past, right? So it serves that dual purpose, I think.
I love that.
And so
you wrote that part yourself. See, even that's poignant. So tell me, where can we get this book?
You can go on my website, benmackjackson.com, to learn more about the book, and it can be ordered on Amazon, of course, and wherever books are sold.
What can you not get on Amazon? Of
course,
I was just
yeah,
talking about
this
that
day and
earlier
age,
today
yeah,
with
and
somebody.
anything.
If I need more hair gel, I can just order it and get it tomorrow. So this is amazing, and I've loved everything we've talked about. I did, and then we kind of talked about on the break, but I do want to know, is there somewhere that you want to go? A story, I don't know, that you'd want to cover? Where do you want to go next? Tell me that.
Well, right now I've been focusing a lot on actually documenting soldiers from the other side of World War II, the Axis powers, and understanding what made them tick and what their experiences were like.
I actually
during the
love
war.
that. I find that fascinating too, only because we have to remember that while things can be really bad, really evil, when people are raised a certain way in a certain environment and they're in that country, it would be interesting to know.
Definitely. And so I've spent a lot of time in Germany, actually, which is where I'd love to go back next, interviewing German World War II veterans, right? And so these are soldiers oftentimes who were just drafted into the service at literally 14, 15, or 16 years old, children, and then sent into the hell of war to do unspeakable things. And so I've interviewed many soldiers who were like that. If you can even call them soldiers, they were children. And so it's interesting to hear that side of the war, because not only do you hear their combat experiences, there's experiences within their cities and towns, their indoctrination under the Nazis, but also the effects of what our war did to them. For example, I interview a lot of veterans of the U.S. Army Air Force during World War II, the bomber pilots and the bomber crews who bombed German cities and German factories. But to actually talk to German soldiers and civilians who survived those bombings, it provides a totally different perspective,
Of course,
of just how horrible it was on the ground.
Because while you can respect why we were in the war and why we were doing what we were doing, there are always people on the ground or in these places that aren't a part of it even.
Of course, yeah.
That are affected by it.
And the human experience of war, I think, is what it all boils down to, right? And that's what I really like to focus on in all of my work. No matter what conflict I'm focusing on, no matter what theater of war I'm focusing on, I think that every single person who survived it or didn't survive it has a story to tell, right? Of course, the stories of those who didn't survive it are often unwritten, and you have to uncover them in different ways. But those who survived, the eyewitnesses and the veterans who fought and lived through it, each one of their stories is different, even if they served in the same unit, in the same battles, in the same war.
Everyone's perception is their own reality.
Everybody has a different view of what they did and what they saw and what they went through, right? And that can go across any war, anywhere throughout history. So that's kind of what I like to focus on. And one of the things that really brings me back to this work constantly is the importance of documenting these stories for future generations.
So you want to go back to Germany? That's where you're going to go.
Certainly, yes. A long answer to a short question.
No, I
but,
love that.
that's
And because
the answer.
when I did not know that they were that young when they were recruited in.
Some
at 14,
of them weren't, of course.
right?
but
even,
yes.
but if any of them were, can you imagine? I mean, at 14, 15, 16 years old, your brain's not even fully developed, so you're in your mid 20s, and I can't even imagine the atrocities.
Yeah, no, it was really devastating for a lot of those young German boys and girls that were sent into
And
combat.
then they survive, right? So the ones you talked to, and how did it impact them? What they saw at that age or did at that age?
It impacted them a lot, of course. I think that can be
Right.
inferred, of course. But I think that it's still a very emotional topic for them, not just because of what they went through, but because of what the situation was like after the war. Of course, Germany lost World War II, right?
Right.
And we're very glad about that. But it's interesting to see how they were treated after the war, and how their service and their experiences affected the rest of their life and what they ended up doing as careers, or what they ended up doing just as people in their lives, their beliefs that transformed. There's one gentleman in particular who I interviewed. He was 15 years old when he was severely wounded in the Battle of Berlin while fighting Russians. I mean, they literally sent him up against tanks with rifles to fight these elite Russian soldiers in the Battle of Berlin. Just, devastating. He settled in East Germany after the war. He became a communist, and he was a German, East German scriptwriter and screenwriter in East Germany. But, it was ironic. Obviously, of course, he was a former member of the Waffen-SS during World War II as a child, and then completely, shifted once he became an adult male into a totally different ideology on the opposite side of the spectrum. So, their personal experiences are often so fascinating, not just what they did during the war, but what they became afterwards.
That's kind of like, I just can't imagine, because I think back to what I was doing at 14 and 15 years old and the impact the things I did, and then to have the impact that would have on you. And we spoke on the break, you speak German.
I do, yes. I had a fantastic German professor at Rollins College, where I did my bachelor's degree, Elke Framsen, and she taught me everything I know about
So you're
the German
fluent?
language. I would say I have a working proficiency. I try my best.
That's
I'm
a
better
hard
at understanding than speaking, I think. But when I'm doing
That
interviews
in
with
and
the
of
veterans,
itself. I
I
told
can
you my
understand.
father-in-law is from Germany, Rudolph, and came over when he was 18. Very thick accent still, can still speak the language. And my husband jokes that over growing up, when he would get on the phone and talk to his brothers or sisters, he had siblings still in Germany, and all he would hear was oof, oh, and he would kind of do the noise and stuff. He's like, doesn't understand it. So the fact that you even learned that in college, because normally kids have to be young to really pick up a language.
Yes,
That's impressive.
I had been interested in German language for a while. Obviously, if you're studying World War II, it's an integral part of it. And so, it's I can understand what they're saying in the interviews, but it's definitely something you have to keep up. If you don't use it, you lose it.
This is true.
I do my best to practice in between everything else that's going on.
I have to tell you, you're probably one of my favorite guests we've ever had, because you fascinate me, because you're so intelligent, but you're down to earth and personable. But we talked about this too on break. I'm a firm believer, if you have a passion for something and you can figure out a way to make a living at it, and you said it best, you'll never work a day in your life.
Exactly. Yeah, I
love
enjoy
that.
every bit of this work, every single day that I do it. And I think that, what drives me to continue, of course, is the fact that these men and women, there's so many of them, World War II veterans still alive, who've never told their story before.
And time's running out.
And time's running out to do that, right? So over the next 10 years really is what I think we will, still have good opportunities to meet and interview these World War II veterans. I mean, most of the men and women I'm interviewing now are over 100 years old, almost every single one of them, right? I was up in Canada last month. I did interviews, and one of them was 110 years old.
Really?
He's Canada's oldest person, and he was born in 1915, which is just mind-boggling.
That is.
But most of them, are over 100. 101, 102, 103 is about the average at this point. So I get to meet 100-year-old people every single week, which is in itself really incredible. And that's just the sort of stories that I'm looking to share. We partnered with Ancestry, the genealogy company, for the 80th anniversary of the end of World War II and into Veterans Day coming up, to document 80 stories from our archive at World War II VHP and publish them on Ancestry platforms. So we're partnering to do that, again, for the anniversary and, of course, for Veterans Day coming up. And so that's been a great way to get these stories out there to a larger audience and to educate people about, the importance of remembering this history for generations to come.
Well, Ben, you're amazing. And I'm not just saying that. I mean that. I'm like, I'm going to have to start thinking about things I need to do with my life and study something. And I don't know, you do important work. Before we go, because we've run out of time, so tell the audience the website and anything else information-wise you want to know before we finish.
Well, you can learn more about the World War II Veterans History Project at WWII Or if you're interested in learning about me and my journalism work, it's benmackjackson.com.
Perfect. Thank you so much for
thank
being
you
a guest.
for having me.
I'd actually really love to have you back. Maybe a little bit in the future after you've done some more interviews. And
I've got stories for days, and I'm always happy to share them.
I love it. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you.
And thank you, everybody. It was great. We loved having Ben, and we'll see you next time on the Style Podcast. Once again, we want to thank Plaza Lincoln and Plaza Cadillac.